Before guitars turned into status symbols and before the big brands felt untouchable, there was a brand that made it possible for regular people to learn to play. That brand was Silvertone. What's going on, guys? I'm Cole Tinsley from Thunder and Whiskey, and today I want to talk to you about Silvertone guitars. Now, Silvertone was the music and audio brand sold by Sears Roebuck & Company. Starting in the early 1900s, Sears used the Silvertone name on everything from radios to record players. But by the 1930s, they started selling guitars under the name, but they didn't manufacture them. Instead, they hired companies like Harmony, Dan Electro, Kay, and Valco. So when you bought a Silvertone, you were really buying a rebranded instrument built by one of the biggest American manufacturers of the time. Here's why Silvertone was important. The late 60s was like the Wild West for the electric guitar. Not all guitar companies followed the same guidelines like they do today. There were much more unique and wild guitars than just Les Paul and Strat copies, and guitars were much harder to get. Long before Guitar Center, Reverb, or Facebook Marketplace existed, there was the Sears catalog. You could literally flip through a catalog in your living room, circle a guitar, and have it shipped to your house. Silvertone offered what was essentially the first beginner guitar kits. Some of their models made by Dan Electro, the 1448 and 1449, came with a case that had a built-in tube amp. This made it so new guitarists can get a guitar and an amp affordably, and therefore more people began learning guitar. The overall construction of these guitars wasn't great. They had masonite bodies with poplar frames, but they did have Dan Electro's iconic lipstick pickups. Silvertone guitars represent something bigger than just specs or build quality. They represent accessibility. In the 1960s, Fender and Gibson guitars were expensive. They still are. People didn't want to drop that kind of money because music wasn't yet a guaranteed career, so parents definitely weren't buying Les Pauls for beginners. But a Silvertone? That was possible. Silvertone guitars helped fuel the garage rock explosion of the late 60s, which influenced punk, indie rock, and alternative music. They weren't polished, and they weren't perfect, but they were attainable. By the late 1960s, though, things started changing. Brands like Gaiatone and Aria offered more features for less money, and Sears' old-school American manufacturers simply couldn't keep up. By the 1970s, the original golden era Silvertone run was basically over. The brand name was eventually retired in 1972, only to be revived decades later as a reissue brand. But everybody knows the originals have a feeling that the reissues don't quite capture. Maybe that's because they're made with halfway decent parts. Today, vintage Silvertone guitars are collectible, not because they were luxury instruments, but because they tell a story. They represent a time when rock music wasn't so corporate and when a unique sound was more important than expensive status symbols. Now, this is my Silvertone 1448, and I got it for just $1. So my parents were at an estate sale and found this in the garage. When they asked the guy running the estate sale, he said it wasn't for sale, but he would give it to them for $1. When I got it, the face was coming off and the body was so warped it was curled in on itself. I added a couple of rods of closet rack to reinforce it and keep it straight, and then I glued the front back on, and so far it feels great to play. Other than that, the only other non-original thing is the bridge, and that's just because I didn't like the fact that you couldn't intonate the original one. That's going to be it for this video. Let me know in the comments if you've ever had a Silvertone guitar. Remember to like the video if you enjoyed it and to subscribe to see more guitar and music related content. Keep thinking outside the box, and I'll see you next time.